Hi there, this is Doug Hall. I'm here to talk to you about real estate. Today's discussion is going to be a short talk about the state of the real estate market in Northern Virginia. Where are we? Where have we been? Where are we going? I'm pulling statistics from the multiple listing service and from December. Since we don't have statistics for January yet, the month isn't complete. Today's January 30th. We won't have that data, a complete set of data for January year over year until probably early next week, since people have closings that occur and they don't get recorded in our MLS system until sometimes days after the closing actually happens. So let's see. December 2024 compared to December 2023. We'll look at last month and we'll go year over year. And we can see trends and changes in the market. So I'm looking at Loudoun County here, but we can extrapolate this to most of Northern Virginia is going to see the same year over year results. So in 2023, that's a year ago, December, Loudoun County had an average sales price of $782,606. $782,606. That's the average. That's all the condos, all the townhouses, all the single family homes, everything that's sold in Loudoun County. December of 23, average price $782. And in that time period, December 23, there were 312 transactions closed. 312. Remember that number. The average sales price compared to original listing price. And that would be what we had it listed for compared to what it actually closed at. Was 99. Okay, let's look at this correctly. Sold price to original list price, 98.9. Sold price to current list price, 99.9. So what that tells me is in December of 23 that the average house sold for slightly less than their asking price, and it kind of appears that there was maybe a 1% price reduction across the board before the houses sold. So comparing the actual sold price to the original list price and then actual sold price to the price it was at when it sold, it's below 100%. Okay, 312 transactions, December 23. Let's look at December 24. Same data points, same stats. That should be this. December 24. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. Average sales price December of 2024 was $838,829. $838,829. That's 40 plus thousand more than the year before. So we saw, let's call that about a 5% increase year over year from 23 to 24. And that's good. I mean, that's kind of what we would want to see is the prices are rising. And that's not a massive increase in price. That's a typical increase. In that same December 24, remember, December 23, there was 312 houses that sold. December 24, there was 400. So almost 25% more. That was a pretty big month for Loudoun County compared to the year prior. And interestingly, too, the sold price compared to the original price in 24, the houses sold for 100.1% of the original price. And then the sold price against the actual list price the day it sold, and that's after any price reductions, was 101.1%. And so, interestingly, the prices are higher by 5% in 2024 The number of transactions is 25% higher in 2024, December 2024. And the sales prices averaged above asking price across the board. Now, there are some that sold for less and some that sold for way more, but the average was above the asking price. I mean, the crazy thing is the average is above the asking price even against the original listing price. And what we mean by that is, often a house is listed for sale for say $800,000, and it doesn't sell in the first couple of weeks, so the seller reduces the price to $775, something like that. So that's the original price, $800,000, and then the actual price might be $775 at the point that it goes under contract and sells and closes. But either way, December of 24, the average sales price was across the board above the average list price. There was 25% more transactions that happened year over year at about 5% higher average sales price than the year prior. So this is crazy. This is crazy because it feels like there's no inventory. When we're showing houses to our clients, I mean, there's nothing. We're waiting every Thursday for the emails to go out from the MLS where people are listing new houses for sale and or putting them up coming soon. Where we've got our clients anxiously anticipating what's going to pop up at the end of the week for sale for that weekend or the weekend after. And it's not much. There aren't many houses. It's very competitive. The other crazy thing is that comparing interest rates from 23 to 24, buyers are in December of 2024, unless they lock their interest rate in like September, October. If they're getting an interest rate in November, December, that's a 7% interest rate. 7%. In the summer, like in June, July, the rates were in the mid sixes, 6.5. And in December of 23, the rates were kind of in the sixes too, 6.5, 6 3/4. But December of 2024, the rates were the highest they've been in the last 15, 18 years. Probably the highest since the financial crash of 2008. So buyers are paying more. Buyers are accepting higher interest rates, and more buyers are doing it. So we have a definite demand issue here. Supply and demand, meaning that there are a lot more buyers looking than sellers selling, and because of that, prices continue to rise and buyers are doing business even though the rates are high. So let's talk about the cost of that to the buyer. And I was talking with my wife about this morning. What we're talking about, these houses actually costing these buyers out of their checkbook. Why are there so many people willing to spend these astronomical numbers and get these high interest rates, 7% interest rates? I don't believe that we have a lot of first-time buyers, low down payment buyers out there. I think what you're seeing is, especially at this price point, if the average is $838 for December 24, you've got people that are either very financially stable, high income, high earners, or you have folks that are selling a house and buying another house, and they are coming with a lot of liquid cash. So that 7% interest rate, maybe they're not borrowing, $700,000, $750,000. Maybe they're borrowing $300,000, and they're putting $550,000 down, so that they end up with a mortgage payment. Even though it's 7%, the mortgage payment isn't painful. And I know there's a lot of people in this market that if they sold their house would have a lot of equity, a lot of equity. If you bought your house anytime from 2000 to say 2019, in that time period, if you bought your house, you likely have paid way less for the house than anybody would pay for it today. You have a much lower interest rate than people would get today. So if you're a person that's trying to sell a house and buy a house that owned the house during that time period, you're probably coming out from the sale with a lot of equity, which you could transfer to put down on a new house. And maybe that's what's happening. I don't know. Last several transactions I've been involved in were cash. Buyers were paying cash, or the buyer was coming with a very large down payment. $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to put down, and even then, they were still ending up with pretty big mortgage payments. And I'll give you an example of the mortgage payment thing. I wrote a Facebook post about a year ago. It talked about the cost of a first-time buyer, a young person that's maybe just gotten married, or is trying to buy their first house. Let's say you've graduated college, graduated trade school, whatever. You've got your life going, and you've got a job that will afford you something, a house you could buy. I used an example last year in this Facebook post of a townhouse in Ashburn. It was a $625,000 townhouse, and the house was listed for $625,000. It was a one-car garage, 3-level, one-car garage, three-bedroom townhouse, and it was built in 2024, I believe, maybe 2023. So it was a 20-year-old house listed for $625,000. That's a big number. That's a really big number. For comparison, my wife and I, our first house we bought in 2005. I'm sorry, 1995. That's how old I am. 1995. We bought a really nice one-car garage townhouse in McNair Farms in Herndon, and we paid $200,800 for that house. $200,000. That same style house we were looking at last year in this Facebook post I wrote was $625,000. So more than triple what we had paid for that type of house 30 years before. So scary numbers. Anyways, so the point of that post was to talk about the cost for a new young first-time buyer. You've gotten married. Maybe you've got a child on the way. Maybe you've finally got a raise and you can afford to buy a house. How much is it going to cost? So I ran the numbers, and this was, mind you, this was a year ago, and the interest rates. I'm estimating here. I don't have the post up in front of me, but the interest rates at the point that I wrote this post were maybe 6.75% for a 30-year fixed. And we did the math. That first-time buyer had to put either 5% down on a conventional loan or 3.5% down on an FHA product. So minimum down payment. And the numbers worked out such that the total out of pocket was going to be, I believe, $35,000, $33,000 plus closing costs. You'd be close to $50,000. And this is at a time when, like right now, sellers aren't helping out with closing costs. You won't see that at all. So the buyer would have to pay those closing costs out of their own pocket. And, most loan programs, to get an interest rate into an even reasonable range, you're going to pay a point at closing, maybe 2 points. So figure the closing costs were maybe $15,000 or more on that transaction. So let's call it $50,000 out of pocket. You're then borrowing $590, $585, something like that. And the mortgage payment was, back then, $4,900 maybe 47. It was a lot. It was a huge number. So your first-time buyer, this is a year ago, had to come out of pocket $50,000 and was going to end up with an almost $5,000 mortgage payment to buy a townhouse that's 20 years old in Ashburn, Virginia. And I ran those numbers and just was gasping at how unreal that was. And I looked at my 3 children and thought, how are they ever going to be able to afford to live here and live comfortably, not be starving, not be house poor on that level? And the answer is they won't. They can't. Unless you're making $150,000 a year, a $5,000 mortgage payment is out of range. And honestly, too, are you gonna? How rational is that? How rational is that to pay $4,000 to $5,000 a month for a 1-car garage townhouse in Ashburn? And this is not a brand new fabulous house with a white kitchen and Wolf appliances. This was a 20-year-old house that looked original from 20 years ago. $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year, plus about $50,000 up front to buy it. It's painful. So that's where the market is. Rates are high, prices are high. Buyers are still out buying, but I think the buyers are mostly coming with cash. It's the folks that have to buy, the need, not the want buyers. Folks that are coming in from out of town, folks that are, death of a family member, divorce, downsizing. Those are the people that are doing business. The first-time buyer, just buying your first house, maybe just got married, I don't know, where life changes and it's time. We don't see much of that. And I fear that we're not going to see much of that for the foreseeable future because it's too expensive. So what can those people do? Can they rent? Sure. I have somebody that's looking for a townhouse to rent in Fairfax right now, a 3-bedroom townhouse in Fairfax, and their budget is $3,000 a month, and they are struggling to find something for $3,000 a month. Or they could buy that same house in Fairfax that they're trying to rent that would probably be close to $1 million, probably $800,000 in Fairfax. So they could buy something like that, but it would be $50,000 out of pocket and $5,000-$6,000 a month. So they might as well rent, right? It's only $3,000 if they could find it to rent. So tough market. What's going on going into the spring? Well, we hope that we have sellers that come off the fence and decide to sell. But those sellers, to be willing to list their houses for sale, I'm sure most of them will enjoy the massive financial gain from selling their house. Big numbers are coming out of a lot of houses. But then they have to move and find something else to move into, and they have to pay these interest rates. And so if you're a guy that bought a house for, let's say in 2010 you bought a house for $600,000, a single family home in someplace in Loudoun County, $650,000 even. That house is now worth $1.2 million. But that $650,000 house, you probably got a 4% rate or even refinanced it down to 2% or 2.5% or 3% over the last 15, 20 years. So you've got a mass of equity and a dirt cheap interest rate, meaning your payment is so low that it feels like you're robbing the bank. And you kind of are. So what are those people are doing? Well, they're not selling. They don't. Why would you give up a 3% interest rate unless you had to. So they're holding on to those properties, and often they put them up for rent, or they just pay off and they hold it. And I think that's the problem in the current market. And I think that's going to be the problem moving forward is all of these houses are locked up. So 25% more sold in December of 24 than December of 23, right? That's great. But that's not much. We need it to double. We need twice as many people selling as are now, 3 times as many, for this market to stabilize. And, I don't think that's going to happen. These people have all this equity and cheap money, and they're just going to hold. And why wouldn't they? I am. I don't think I'm ever going to move from this house until I retire. Why would I? I've got a cheap interest rate. So I don't know. So my advice to sellers right now is look at your equity and ask yourself if you could do something else with that. Could you move your equity to another property? Could you relocate out of the market? Could you buy something new and have it be affordable? And my advice to buyers is marry the house and date the rate. Marry the house, but date the rate. What that means is buy the house, lock in the sales price. If it's, let's say, $838,000, that's the average in Loudoun County. You got to get on the train because the train is moving regardless of whether you're moving. So you got to be on that train. So buy the house, even if it hurts. Pay the number, because once you've paid the number, that's the number. That's forever the number that you paid for that house. If the interest rate is 7%, you can refinance that if rates go down. So you're not paying 7% for the rest of your life for 30 years. You're paying 7% until rates go down, and you can refinance the property. But if you hold and you don't buy, you're going to end up with a higher sales price and probably similar interest rates. So it just gets more expensive. So I think waiting and hoping is probably an unwise strategy. I think the buyers need to just go ahead and bite the bullet and buy the house and accept these ugly interest rates, and with the hopes that the Fed will drop rates by maybe a point or so in the next 3 to 4 years. And sellers, list your houses. Put the house on the market. Grab that equity. And now's probably the best time to move south. The markets like Northern Virginia that are immune to a lot of the economic bubble. You can sell your house here and end up with a bidding war, and your price goes up, as evidenced by the data from December, where most houses, the average house sold for above its asking price. So whatever you think you can ask for your house, you might get a little more. So if it's time, put that house on the market, get liquid, and then go south. And I'm recommending this to people my age. I'm 56. If you can telecommute, or you're about to retire, or you can work from home, or whatever. The markets south of here, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, the coastal markets, the areas where people buy second homes, are in free fall, especially Florida. So, if the plan was to buy in Florida and retire, you might want to take advantage of that opportunity strike while the iron's hot. You've got high equity here and houses in Florida that are sitting on the market indefinitely. I've got several friends that work the Florida market, and days on market for listings are climbing. So you could sell your house here, go down and negotiate a killer deal on a house in Florida, maybe pay cash for it, and retire, or continue to telecommute from there. Same thing in South Carolina. The coastal towns of South Carolina are seeing a precipitous drop in sales. North Carolina, same thing. So I do believe that it is time. I do believe that the market will see some improvement going into this year, but I do believe that the sellers are the ones that hold the key to it all. The sellers have to have a reason to sell, and have it be a very motivated reason. So I'm hopeful, but for right now, we do see numbers climbing, sales figures climbing, prices climbing, and the average sales price is above the asking price. So I guess we can call that a win. And Northern Virginia real estate is not for the faint of heart. So if you're trying to move into this market, it's going to be a challenge. So anyways, that's today's conversation. We're going to talk on and off in the next years and months about this, but I wanted to talk about the state of the market right now as it stands. We'll talk about this again maybe in a month and see if things have changed. So signing off now. We'll talk later. Have a great day.